Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around the world. This is Doug Brunke at Global Chamber, and we have a great conversation in store for you today. And I know that doubly well because these three people just did a radio program, and which we'll send the link to after this video. And they were all extraordinarily amazing. So you guys are all fantastic. What we'll do is I'd like to start with Gabriela. Gabriela, you're at least in my top left screen, so we'll kind of go from there. Now, Gabriela is the founder and chief executive officer of Trade in Motion. You work in some particular segments, and a lot of the things I see in LinkedIn are related to mining, but I know you're involved with aerospace and some other industries. And when I say involved, you are helping companies from both sides, Mexico and the US, build business on either side of the border. So we really appreciate your membership in Global Chamber. We love supporting you. We love your support, and we look forward to hearing more about your ideas around opportunities between the US and Mexico. And it's particularly timely because it looks like USMCA is finally going to move forward. It's been bipartisan support all along, probably a variety of things that have delayed it. We knew it was going to happen, and fortunately, despite Indira's prediction that it would be last year, I heard your prediction on the radio, or it will be next year. I heard your prediction, and many other people predicted next year or never, but it actually looks like it's happening. So certainly weave that into your conversation. So Gabriela, please let us know your perspective on opportunities between the US and Mexico.
Yeah, thank you, Doug, for the introduction. I'm very proud of being part of the Global Chamber. It's really helpful for doing business around the world. This morning, in the social networks, of course, I posted about the USMCA, which finally has been signed in Mexico City. And I think that many of us are happy about that. We can continue building relations between the three countries. And as you said, I manage the three countries. I support companies to do business in Mexico, the US, and Canada in 4 specific sectors: mining, aerospace, automotive, and clean tech. And one of my specialties, the strongest one, is mining. That's why you see me a lot in the social media network. And regarding mining, I would like to talk a little bit about that sector. It's a strong sector in Mexico. There are 500 years or more of mining in Mexico. There's a big tradition, and I will give you some statistics to that way you will see how strong the business in mining is in Mexico. Mexico is the 4th largest country of foreign direct investment in mining all over the world, and the 2nd in Latin America. In 2018, there was, from the total of foreign direct investment in Mexico, which is $32 billion US, 1.4 billion went to the mining sector. So it's a lot of money. The total mining production in Mexico, it's $13 billion. And Mexico produces gold, copper, zinc, and uranium. And a very good thing is that Mexico is a leader in silver production. We are the #1, the first country which produces silver. And the foreign direct investment in Mexico in mining, the majority is Canadian, and after it's American. There are 2 big companies working. There are many companies. There are 32 US companies registered and investing in the mining sector in Mexico, and two big ones like Newmont and Coeur d'Alene. There are many opportunities. I've been traveling with companies all over Mexico, bringing them to visit mines, because that's a way to sell mining products in Mexico. You have to go to the mines and visit the mine managers to offer the products. And I've been traveling in Mexico, bringing clients to the mines. And I can say that there are opportunities. There are opportunities selling machinery, safety and security equipment, selling technology, environmental control, parts, and service for repairing. So I think that there's a fair amount of business in Mexico. I wanted to talk about this sector, and if anyone needs additional information, of course I am ready, and you can also send me a message or calling me. I will be ready to provide more information if necessary.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that introductory information. What we're going to do is we'll have each one of the three experts on trade between the U.S. and Mexico talk first, and then we'll answer questions. And so if you have questions, send them, put them in the Q&A box, send them to info@globalchamber.org. We'll handle those and send them on to our experts. And so our next speaker is Eduardo Gonzalez. He's the founder and president of 258 Consulting. You know, he's got a background with Pro Mexico. That no longer exists, and so he's moved into his own consulting business. And one thing I've learned actually about all of these speakers is they're very well connected. Eduardo is particularly well connected because of his Pro Mexico activities that he's done in the past. And Eduardo, we look forward to hearing more about your perspectives on USMCA, trade, and opportunities for companies on both sides of the border.
Oh, thank you so much, Doug. Yeah, I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate all your efforts and all the work that you do to link international companies around the world with other companies around the world. Yes, we are very happy because of the protocol, the signature protocol that was done in Mexico. We're waiting for the ratification from the Senate, and I think we're moving forward. I think the biggest issues with the automotive labor supervision or labor rules in Mexico, or how to the issue was how to supervise that labor laws were actually being implemented in Mexico has been surpassed. And there was an issue with medicines, and yeah, I think this will help us move forward, especially with large investments who were the ones who were waiting to see what's going to happen with the treaty. Talking about opportunities in Mexico, I think, like I said, once we get the formalization of the agreement, companies that were waiting to do large investment for the future are going to be ready to do so. We've been working with companies under the old free trade agreement, meaning we help them find contract manufacturers, suppliers in Mexico. And that's still going on, and I think that's going to continue to grow as it has been growing in the past, especially with the geopolitical situations and discussions that U.S. has been having with, especially with China. So there are a lot of opportunities. Of course, also Mexico is an opportunity not just as a manufacturing company. It's also an export destination. More than 120 million people makes it a very attractive market for companies that want to go into Latin America. And of course, Mexico is a great country to start and to use it as a platform for exports. We are basically on the same time zones with the large major cities in the US. There's no issue on the language. Most of the companies in Mexico speak English. And that the infrastructure that we have in Mexico makes it a great country to be connected with the US on rail, with ports, on the road. And of course, the free trade agreements that we have with more than 46 countries makes it the perfect location to use as a platform for exports. And manufacturing-wise, we are, well, the largest Latin America exporter of high integration or advanced manufacturing. If you take the total of this particular manufacturing of Latin America, Mexico accounts for 67% of those manufacturing parts. Of course, our main industries continue to be the automotive industry. We have also large needs for suppliers in the aerospace. IT companies can find not only a market, but also a source for talent. Medical device manufacturers can find the possibility to do prototyping in Mexico and also manufacturing their devices under clean rooms and specific manufacturing certifications that can be done. And of course, we have a large history of electric and electronic manufacturing done in Mexico. So if I will encourage companies to explore the possibility of Mexico, we have a great need for suppliers, like I said, in the aerospace and advanced manufacturing. And also look at Mexico as a talent pool for software development, prototyping, research and development. And of course, use it as a platform to export to other countries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much. So that's a great introduction in terms of some of the things to be thinking about, whatever side of the border you are. And so we'll get into some more specifics here in a moment. You know, in terms of our next speaker, Indira Jeffrey, you know, she's a partner and business development consultant with EKATAR, All-in-One Marketing. She also is a founder and the founder of iGlobal Business Consulting, and we're very pleased to work with Indira with her brother actually in Global Chamber Guanajuato, and that's where you're originally from. I know you have family there. You may even be spending the holidays there, I'm not sure. But you're very well connected in the business community there and around Mexico, and you're very much in tune with a lot of the things that are going back and forth between the US and Mexico. So Indira, thank you for sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you, Doug, for the invitation, and thank you for being a great leader at the Global Chamber and give to all of us this great opportunity to be connected internationally. Well, about Mexico, and adding to what Eduardo and Gabi already said, I just would like to point what the World Bank mentions. They say that, and they categorize Mexico as an upper middle income nation. Mexico's 1.3 trillion gross domestic product makes Mexico the 15th largest economy in the world. In terms of a nominal gross domestic product, while placing Mexico on the 11th spot in terms of purchasing power. Also, Mexico is the second largest economy in Latin America after Brazil, of course, and it is the 7th largest oil exporting nation in the world. Therefore, with all those characteristics, right away, Mexico is the country to make investments, the country to go and do business with. And just to mention, some of the industries where investors can go and have opportunities in Mexico. Some of them, Eduardo and Gabi mentioned, but I'm going to mention the ones I have in here is the agribusiness, auto parts and services, the aerospace, education services, energy, environmental technology, franchising, housing and construction, packaging equipment, plastics and resins, security and safety equipment and services, information technology, transportation infrastructure equipment and services, and travel and tourist services. So just based on the previous comment, you can see that Mexico is a great country to do business with. I know a lot of our members in the Global Chamber that are trying to expand to other countries. And some of them, they are looking to Europe, to the Middle East, or to Asia. But also, I invite them to try and find out what Mexico can offer. And of course, Eduardo, Gabi, myself, and other of my connationals in Mexico are open to any questions. Some of the advantages right now is that the government, the current administration, they are very focused on technology. In Guadalajara is one of the states in the central Mexico. They have a lot of companies of technology settled in that area. And also, they have some benefits, tax benefits, and that, foreign companies can take advantage of. Also, it depends on the state, but each state, they offer incentives to foreign companies that are bringing foreign investment. We only just need to find out what kind of incentives they have and see how we can help to our members to expand to Mexico. Yeah, that's what I have, as an introduction.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Indira. Really appreciate it, and some really interesting data in there. So we're going to take your questions now, and as they come in, we'll handle them. So you can either type them in the Q&A box or send them to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll monitor from here. A couple quick initial questions. One of them harkens back to the radio program, that something that really stuck with me that Gabi mentioned, which was, if you're going to do business in Mexico, you need to eat tacos. Which basically says, if you're going to do business really in any country, you better adjust your approach. And so, as I think, Gabriela, you mentioned, you run into people who say, hey, we don't do business like that in our country. And well, if you're going to do business in another country, you better be aware of what those things are that you need to adjust to be able to be received well. So could you explain maybe a little bit, each of you, things that you see of Americans coming into Mexico that need to be adjusted typically, or vice versa for Mexican companies coming into the US? What are some of the normal things that you ask the people you work with to adjust in their behavior?
Okay, maybe I can begin because I was the one who talked about tacos. That's true. And I talk about tacos, mezcal, and tequila.
Exactly. Okay, nice.
But according to my experience, what I see is in Mexico, many is made building a relationship. So you have to build a relationship with the client. You have to expect long meetings. You have to visit 2 or 3 times per year. The buyer is expecting your visit. I would say, yeah, in Mexico, many people and many companies speak English, but I recommend to speak the language of the client. And of course, they speak English too, but that helps. They feel more comfortable and to deepen the culture, to know what Mexicans like, how they do business, like exactly building a relationship. And one more thing that I would say is to treat Mexico as multiple small markets, because Mexico is big and regions are different. People from the regions are different. So I suggest to treat Mexico as multiple small markets. The North and the South are very different. The food, the way of living, everything. So I think that that would help someone who would like to do business in Mexico.
Okay. Before I ask Indira and Eduardo to comment, could you flip it around? And so for Mexican companies coming into the US, what are typical things that you see that they need to adjust?
Well, mainly just to be familiar with the American business culture in general, because some of the issues I've seen with the companies I've been consulting from Mexico coming into the US is first, the language. Mostly the companies that are expanding right now are from that age range. Well, I mean, the owners or the directors, on from 40 to 60 years old. And the way to do business in Mexico, it was different in our era, meaning to doing big business with other countries. So, for example, English was not very explored, or it was not required as a second language in the some of the education system. So not all the people from that range speak English, because right now you can see it is required in some of the public schools, English as a second language. So for the younger generations, it's easier for them to speak fluently English. And therefore, the clients, they don't even have their websites in English. So they are not prepared. It's a little bit difficult to work with them on getting them familiar with other culture, with other customs. And like, for example, and vice versa, as Gabi was mentioning, in Mexico, everything is slow and you have to create trust first. Creating trust is through referrals, and in the United States, it's not like that. In the United States, it's fast-paced. You are not looking for referrals. You are looking for information in the data, meaning like if someone from here wants to do business with a company, they go directly to the data. In some of the agencies in Mexico, no. So it's more, if I need to make you my friend first, I need to trust you first, and then I will make business with you. So some of the clients, they want to come here into the United States and work that way. So it's a little bit of shock when they come, because here everything is fast, everything is business. And sometimes the clients, they don't understand why they change. So I think for those consultants that are doing business with Latin American country clients, well, they have to prepare them first, meaning about the American business culture before they come into the United States.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Eduardo, you see it both ways, in and out of each country. What are your perspectives on this?
Well, I think both of my colleagues have it pretty well narrowed down the biggest difference. But I think every industry is different. For example, if you are dealing with aerospace, I think you will find a lot of similarities within the US and Mexico, because they deal in certifications, they deal in processes. So the communication is pretty simple English. They understand the technology part. If you talk in automotive, it's about the same thing. But then if you want to get into the Mexican market and the consumer goods market, then what Indira mentioned is very important. The message, your website, the label has to be done specifically for Mexico. And if you go into other Latin American market, you cannot use the same Mexico label or the same Mexican message. You have to use it a different regional message and wording and colors and way of doing things. So it depends a lot of the regions. Mexico is a big region, different markets, different way of doing things. Of course, if you're dealing with, for example, textiles in the southern part of Mexico, it will take lots of time to understand. It will take lots of time to get a prototype. There are a lot of issues with logistics, but at the end, you're going to end up with a high quality product, reasonably priced, but it will not come without a hassle. If you deal with border towns manufacturing, then you will find communication is fairly the same way as the US, and things can get done, and then you get higher prices. You're competing with lots of people doing the same thing. And so those are the kinds of issues. For Mexicans want to get into the US market, there's a lot of unknowns for them. There are certain ways products get distributed here. The companies are used to buying products from distributors, not direct from manufacturers. So that creates another hurdle for them, because that is an additional cost for their product to get into the consumer, to the consumer. So it's it is a process. They need a budget for promoting their product, which most of the companies don't come with a budget for that. The surprise that they have to do the distribution through a third party, it's also a surprise for them. But for companies who understand the way of doing things in the US, and they have sufficient volume, a good quality product for the US market, it's fairly easy for them. What else can I say? Yes, tacos and mezcal is very important. Most of the business meetings the serious ones will be done during lunch. It takes 2 hours, and it starts from 2, and it doesn't have a time to end. So, you have to understand that you have to build a relationship with your partners in Mexico. And that's the best way to do it. And also, when you go into a Mexican market, you have to go through people that already have a relationship. Building that relationship will take a long time. And if you go through people that already have a relationship there and know the way around it, can make the process shorter and more effective.
Got it. Great.
If I may add to the last comment Eduardo mentioned, is that in some areas in Mexico, the final decision is not for the owner of the company. Sometimes they have to have the final decision in group with the main owners, or shareholders of the company. So that's why sometimes it takes longer for a company to give a decision on something related to the negotiation.
Got it. Gabriela, did you want to make a comment about companies coming into the U.S.? And I know from your background, you've worked with Canadian companies and Mexican companies coming into both the U.S. and into Canada, probably, perhaps. I'm not sure there's that much of a difference of going into Canada or going into the U.S. for a Mexican company, but what are some of your observations there?
Yeah. Canadians and Americans do business differently, very differently. And I noticed that, of course, when I came to live in the US, when I arrived to the US, out of North America, I saw people thinking that Americans and Canadians do business the same way, and it's not the case. However, I agree with Indira, things go fast here, faster than in other countries. And you can do business, I would say, easily. There are, of course, restrictions, and you need to know, to have a lot of information about imports and how to do it. But I can say that it's we can say easy to do business in the US. It's a business country, and Americans like to do business. So that's my comment regarding my experience in the three countries. Not saying that Mexico and Canada, they don't like to do business. It's only a different way, and in the US things go fast.
Okay. Well, what have you observed relative to the US and Canada differences? You said it's quite a bit different.
The way Canadians and Americans think, Americans are very look forward. If they say I go, and they go straight forward. Canadians think more about, they go a little bit slower, thinking more, what are the risks, what are the good, the bad, what can arrive in the paths. That's according to my experience, that's what I see. Okay. They both arrive at the same point, but maybe one goes really like straightforward, and the other goes more like thinking more about how things are developing.
I see. Okay, interesting. Well, one of the questions that just came in is around the mention was of shareholders, and I think that was you, Indira, talking about that they're involved in the process. And so it's serious lunches that that each of you kind of touched on. Should they be part of those? And does that define a serious lunch when a shareholder is there? And could you also, building on that question, talk a little bit about the impact of family businesses on both sides of the border? Many times we end up working with companies, particularly in Mexico, that are family groups. And so is that part of the reason why it might be a little bit disorienting for either Americans or other country folks coming into Mexico?
Yes, well, actually in Mexico, we have, let's say, two kind of companies. The family-owned companies that with the time they grew, and now they are even international companies, and the companies that came from other countries and established in Mexico. The companies, the family-owned companies, they are the main patriarch or matriarch, or the owner of the company. They always want to be involved in all the decisions for the company. So that's why they go to the serious meetings or in the non-too serious meetings. Meaning non-too serious is because they just like to control. It's most about control. And but for those companies where they let the leadership to their sons, it is more casual, the type of doing business. For those companies that are international companies that are established in Mexico, of course, the business culture is different. And of course, they do business regarding the Mexican style of doing business, but the owners, of course, they are not involved. And these transnational companies, they have their own personnel managers that are in charge of each area and the ones that are in charge of the negotiations.
Well, oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to mention just that part of the due diligence is understanding the hierarchy of decision-making with the Mexican company. Mm-hmm. So you could be dealing with an international company with operations in Mexico where decisions take place outside Mexico. You could be dealing with a family company in Mexico, but with a nice structure where you have a CFO or a CEO that is not part of the family. Or you could be dealing with a family company where the owner is the CEO, CFO, COO, and all the C's involved. So you have to understand what is the hierarchy of the decision making. So you don't have to spend a lot of money and a lot of lunches with people that will not make a decision. And that's part of the due diligence that companies have to do. And that's part of the services that we provide. We do that part of the investigation or follow through with the companies, and we know who to sit on an important lunch with, so you don't have to take a lot of lunches with the director or the plan manager who actually don't have much decision on the purchasing or joint venture or negotiation or whatever you're doing in Mexico. So it depends on each company how they structure the decision making. And it's important for you to understand how that company deals with decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. The one thing that I'm struck by, because I think those of us that live near the border have a much better understanding of the similarities between the businesses in the US and Mexico, and yet we can't diminish the fact that they're quite a bit different. As we look at, for instance, the ease of doing business as measured by the World Bank, the US is number 6, and they've been increasing this last year from 8 to 6. Mexico took a step back, number 54 in the world, and stepped back to 60. And so, I mean, this is a little bit of a different, but also kind of the same conversation. Why do you think Mexico has stepped back a little bit? Do you see that? And what are some of the implications for doing business in Mexico because of that?
Well, I haven't seen the study, Doug, so I have to look at it to see whether they're measuring. To be very honest, I'm not aware of the study. But yeah, we have to see what they took in consideration. Is it government procedures? Is it logistics? Is it even the free trade agreement? Not signing the free trade agreement could affect the status of doing business in Mexico.
A lot of times it's the World Bank study, and so a lot of times it relates to how easy or difficult it is. You know, what barriers are set up, both tariff and non-tariff. You know, corruption. You know, those kinds of issues. I think, you know, to me it seems Mexico is free of that, or largely free of that, and it might be related to maybe the country as a whole. I mean, how should companies view that kind of information, and are there certain things that companies from wherever around the world dealing in Mexico, what should they be concerned about relative to those types of things. And also, by the way, safety. I don't know if that's part of the equation, but there are certainly people that are further away from the border that are concerned because they don't know that, like, there might be like people on the other side of the border with machine guns ready to kill you. And sometimes those kind of effects and dramatic effects are thrown in through the media both ways, actually, right? In terms of, if you view the US from the China lens, everybody is waiting for the next gunman to show up at their workplace, and yet we know that's not a reality, but there is a reality there. So how should people view those kinds of issues that they might see in the media with doing business every day?
I think everything should be seen through the eyes of the consultant in this case. That is why it is very important, if anyone is doing business with Mexico, to find someone that is from Mexico, like, Gabi, Eduardo, or myself, so we can give them direct information. Unfortunately, the communication, the media is open to anyone, and things may seem bigger than they are. And of course, with one or two incidents that are just so everywhere on social media, and with false information, can be very alarming. So my advice is not to panic, and to find someone who can you trust, and someone who can give you information, true information, and you can trust, because it is very important that you have the way to see what is real in real time, and what is happening at that moment, not through news that they may be not giving you the right information.
Yeah, and I think it's probably more, the issue is that it's somewhat exaggerated, because the news is going to highlight the accidents, shootings, and the killings and things like that, versus normally we don't see that, right? Any of us on either side of the border. It's not visible to us. So sorry, Gabriela, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I would like to add something only, that's true. Sometimes the news don't help. You see nowadays how social media, how news are, and in many cases, you only see the bad side, and not always it's true. That's sometimes you don't know when you read something if it's 100% true or not. So I agree with Indira. You should approach someone you trust to help you to see what's going on in the country. I have an example. I bring companies in road trips to visit plants, and also to visit mines and beneficiation plants in Mexico. And I have a team in the areas. In each area, I have teams. They live there, they work in the sectors, and they know what is going on in that part of the country. They know how to do, what to do, what not to do. And they are the experts. They know what they can, at what time they can go in a certain path or in a certain route, at what time they can't. So that's why it's important to hire the right people to do business, to support you in all aspects. I mean, the trade aspect, the commercial aspect, the safety aspect, the security, everything. I think that's why companies need someone to support them, because this person would be their eyes to know how to do business in all aspects.
what's significant and what's not, and totally agree. You know, it's hard to believe, but 32 years ago, some of my first trips internationally were to Korea, and in those days, on the news in the U.S., there were all sorts of visuals of a demonstrations in downtown Seoul they were burning mattresses and like rioting, and people had a bad view of pre-Olympics. I think it was 1988 Olympics. Like, oh, the Olympics are going to be totally scarred by all this rioting. And I was going to Korea every few months, and it was like, I don't even see this. Where is it? I don't even know where it is. And finally, one of our distributors took us where this university is, and there was like one city block where all the students were demonstrating, but the media was camped out there, you know, watching them burn mattresses, which was like one little area. So that's their job. They should be highlighting, you know, news, quote unquote, but you shouldn't let that overrun your perspectives. And so all of your comments about working with someone who knows what to filter and what's real is critically important. And by the way, that's important anywhere in the world. You always should have somebody who knows the country and knows what's significant, knows the hierarchy and how to deal with these companies. This is normal type stuff for doing business internationally, along with the normal stuff like being flexible and not trying to impose your culture and your idea of business on someone else. These are key things. So thank you for all of you for reiterating that. One of the other things we should cover before we're ending in a few minutes, and we have 10 more minutes, so keep that in mind regarding your responses. But as USMCA comes in, it's not going to happen immediately, I don't think, even with signature in all three countries coming up. But what are each of you seeing in terms of changes? What should a company be considering, whether you're in US, Mexico, or Canada? When will it impact companies? And then what are some of the impacts that people will see? Will it change some of the things people are thinking about in terms of business opportunities?
Well, I think we should wait for the final document to come out to strategize on all the industries, especially automotive. Once we have the final document, we will know what are going to be the rules for the game and see how we're going to handle it. I don't see major changes. Like I said, automotive, I think, will be one of the biggest industries affected, the way of doing things. But yeah, we need to wait for the document to come out. Other industries, I think they're going to continue to assess. Investments in Mexico, I think you're going to see a jump on the number of companies investing in Mexico once the final document is published, especially other industries other than automotive. Other than that, I think, shouldn't be any surprises.
Okay, very good. Indira or Gabriela, do you have any comments about what you're expecting with now USMCA coming on?
Well, I think in general, it's going to be a positive news. It is already, but it's, as soon as it takes place, it's going to increment the willingness to do business. For example, from the Mexican side, people is eager to sell with this trade agreement in place. They are going to have more incentive to start expanding to the United States to do business in general. I know that there are some industries that from the three countries are the most important, but in general, for the Mexican side, it is a good news.
Okay, very good. It sounds like you concur, Gabriela.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Indira. I agree with my colleague. And also talking about the mining sector, foreign suppliers to the mining industry have very few barriers to entering the market. And I think that nothing will change with the USMCA.
Okay, that's probably good news. You know, in terms of market opportunities that you're seeing out there, take us 5 years from now and then look back and tell us, you know, what are some of the successes that you are expecting to see? Which industries? Certainly automotive, aerospace, and cannabis, maybe fintech. There's some industries that are really hot now. Are you expecting the continued development of these markets, and are there some surprises in store over the next 5 years that you see out there?
You know, I think technology is one of the main industries, and I'm looking forward to what is waiting for us from here to 5 years. And also, I know that the trade agreement will have some revisions, and I hope that they include everything about technology because we have to have more control. We need to have procedures in place. We have to have meaning, for example, for artificial intelligence, for Bitcoin, for all those new industries that are not regulated. We need to regulate those industries. And I don't think they are included in the trade agreement as deep as I would like them to be, because I know right now here in the United States, we are going to convert to the 5G, right? In Mexico, they will do that sooner or later. Regarding artificial intelligence, in Mexico, a lot of companies are working very hard on improving what it is already, and there are no regulations in place. So that's my main worry, that there are some industries that are included in the international trade agreement, but the emerging industries are not.
That's an interesting perspective, because all three of you have talked even today and also at the radio program that we'll link in the blog post on agriculture and automotive, where a lot of the lobbying has happened, I presume, between the industry and the legislators on all sides. But some of these emerging industries, I don't know if they have lobbying already or whether they need it, and that may not be included. So that's an interesting observation. I had not heard about that before. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gabriela or Eduardo, what do you think? What are some of the industries that people should be looking at over the next 5 years?
Well, it is my understanding that the new administration, the new government in Mexico is pushing, or will be pushing, a lot of investment in automotive and aerospace sectors. That's my understanding. So maybe we will see a change there. And of course, in environmental technology, now environment is the sector. We are all looking at that. I think that on that side, we will see improvements, technology and innovation.
Okay, sounds good. Eduardo, what do you think?
Well, I think we're going to see more collaboration between Canada, Mexico, and U.S. companies collaborating in the IT industry, IT sector. A lot of new developments with blockchain, with artificial intelligence, and just new technologies coming in for the U.S., Mexico, and Canada market or the world. So a lot of collaboration. I see a lot of Mexican companies investing in the U.S. We have seen more interest in companies trying to get into the U.S. market, not only for the consumer goods, but also financial services, remittances, and the money that is being sent from foreign countries into Mexico. And also a growth in contract manufacturing requests more than direct investment. I think companies are going to delegate the manufacturing to other parties, make things simpler. So I think there's going to be a growth in that particular sectors and industries.
Okay, that sounds good. And
Excuse me, there is a question in the chat from KK Yuswa. I don't know who's that.
in San Diego.
Okay, so he is saying, are you seeing more Mexican companies set up American divisions to sell their goods and services in the US? I think so. I know that companies, and specifically in the state of Guanajuato, where I'm from, and this is because I'm very familiar with the economic development area there and in touch with some of the company owners. They are looking and they are trying to expand or move to the United States. And this is for the state of Guanajuato, but I think in general, Mexican companies, they are willing to expand or move their business to the United States. What do you think, Eduardo and Gabby?
Well, like I mentioned, I think we're going to see a lot of Mexican companies establishing more presence in the U.S., either to consolidate their exports or just to grow their market in the U.S., because in Mexico they already have a high percentage of that particular market and they're looking to grow. So the answer is yes. I think we will see more of that.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Yeah, the answer is yes.
So, and actually, I was going to ask kind of this question earlier, and we're going to have to wrap up, and I'll ask each of you just to kind of give 30 seconds as a wrap up. But one of our members is a mezcal company, Mezcal Complice in Oaxaca, and one of the interactions from them is that their product is very well received in the U.S. and those that we've introduced have been that's a hot market in the U.S., right? They may not necessarily, in fact, they won't set up operations to manufacture mezcal, because I don't think you can and still call it mezcal in the U.S., but there is an export market there. And Americans eat a lot of tacos, but I don't know if there's, there are taco companies or other food. There certainly are food companies from Mexico that would make sense to set up in the U.S. So kind of in the last few minutes, and if you could just kind of each of you talk to any other things that we should be thinking about relative to business across borders and anything else that you'd like to say as a wrap up. Who would like to start?
Ladies?
Ladies first, huh? Okay. Gabriela, you want to start since you started the meeting?
It's okay. I can start. Oh, the thing is that my recommendation is for companies who would like to do business in Mexico or the US to be open to change things from the way you do business in your country, and to modify all the language, maybe starting a different language, and to get really involved in the culture, to arrive to sell your products and to talk to the client the way the client expects.
Yes, I agree. It's very important for both sides, American and Mexicans, to be open-minded, to be able to have room for change, and to be informed is very important. And as we have been mentioning before, to hire someone from the area and with knowledge about how to do business in Mexico. Thank you.
Eduardo, wrap it up.
Yeah, every market, every industry has their own way of doing things. I think due diligence, market study, research, partnering with consultants such as my colleagues and myself can greater shorten the time that will take you to understand both markets, and will save you money at the end. Mezcal is a really particular product that is not easy. You have to find the right distribution. You have to find the right importer, and there's a lot of promotional that you have to do in order to move sufficient volume that will make sense for a company to do business. So every industry is different. Do your research, and we're here to help. And thank you, Doug, for the opportunity again.
Oh, our pleasure. So, and one thing I want to follow up on the question from Ken in San Diego. His company, they're a member, and they help companies that are interested in work with the federal government in the U.S. And so I'm assuming some of the angle of his question was related to, are there Mexican companies that could be interested in selling to the federal government going forward? So if either any of the three of you or anyone listening today has companies that are coming into the U.S. that would like to get the GSA number and the other types of things that are needed to sell that way, or to any government, let us know and we can connect you to Ken. So
Perfect.
Okay.
thank you all for your comments. You're all extraordinary. We love you. You're doing great work. And if anybody is listening out there from anywhere in the world interested to do business in North America, we're happy to connect you to any of these three experts. Thanks for your support. Our next conversations, I think we have next couple meetings here in 2019 are around for members, League of Extraordinaries on the 19th, and we've got kind of getting prepared for 2020 on the 18th of December. We also have the beginning of 2020, we have 3 consecutive days, 3 consecutive conversations about first exporting, importing, and then, you know, what are some of the things that can help improve your global business for 2020 with some really amazing members as well. So thank you all again for today. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.